All right, so Genesis 21, and this passage is just jam-packed full of information. It's dense, and we'll learn a lot from this today. So these are the things that it's going to cover: the birth and circumcision of Isaac, the sending away of Hagar and Ishmael. That was Abraham's son that was born to him through Hagar about 13 years prior to now. The marriage, Ishmael's going to get married to an Egyptian woman, and we are not invited to the wedding, by the way. And the striking of a covenant between Abimelech, who is king of the Philistines, and Abraham. And that has affected a lot of stuff today, even right to today, where the Philistines are the people that filled up the land called, that we know today as Gaza. And it's kind of like they're still there, or relatives of them are still there, and maybe that's one reason why the Jewish people don't have that land all to themselves yet, is because of this treaty that Abraham, this covenant, let's make it a stronger word, this covenant that Abraham makes with the Philistines. So let's just take a look here. We'll just jump in and see what happens. Genesis 1 to 34.
The whole thing?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
No, we're going to break it up in chunks and pieces today. So, decisions have consequences. How many of you know that? How many of you have experienced that? Decisions have consequences, and Abraham made some decisions along the way in his life that affected many nations. Abraham wasn't a perfect man, he was a man. I mean, he was a perfect man because God calls him, he's one of his Tamim guys, but he's human just like you. I mean, he came to the knowledge of God just the same way that you did, by faith and obedience. Okay, so he's not only affected himself, but he affected many nations as well. And it not only affected nations, it resulted in nations. Can you think of any decision that you've made that has resulted in a nation? No, probably not. Abraham did. Resulted in many nations. Think about that for a minute. Let's take a look. He decided to take Lot with him. That resulted in the Ammonites and the Moabites. He decided to go to Egypt and visit Pharaoh and start the story, she's my sister. Okay? That resulted in Hagar given as a handmaiden, and Ishmael, his son, came from Hagar. And Ishmael disdained Isaac as Hagar had despised Sarai. And it resulted in the Arabs. He decided to go to Gerar of the Philistines and visit with Abimelech. Gave him the same story, she's my sister. And that's resulted in a peace treaty with Gaza. But that's kind of the bad news. But on the other hand, that very same decision wound up being the basis of a future water source for the land of Israel. I'll give you a hint right now out on the side of your thing. Isaac's life winds up being all about water. Is water important to life? Yeah, we don't exist very long without it. Right? So, on one hand, the enemies of Israel are being identified. Hey, Vicki.
Hi, Vicki.
Hi, Vicki. Hi, Vicki. The enemies of Israel are being identified over here. Ammonites, Moabites, the Egyptians, and over here it's land for peace origins. Maybe this is where the land for peace. It's very interesting. Since Israel came back in 1948, and they've fought a lot of battles, and they've always won the battles, have they not?
Yeah.
They won the battles, and then they wind up giving the land back to people in order to obtain peace. It's not always a great idea. You know, I'm trying to think when the Denver Broncos would just kind of would give back the win of a football game to say, I don't know, the Oakland Raiders. We just decided to give this win back to you. We decided to give the win back to you.
Yes, sure.
Yes, would you, that doesn't even compute, does it?
And the trophy.
And the trophy, and the Super Bowl ring, and whatever, right? That doesn't compute. Okay.
Patriots cheat anyway.
Yeah. So we understand this in our society. It's not unusual for a man to have two families, you know? Is it?
No.
What's unusual is for a man to have two wives at the same time. Okay? But it's not unusual for a man to have two families.
I'd like to do that, but that would be really big of me.
There he goes again.
I know.
What do you think of these things?
Does he belong here?
So we can say this, you know, we get this, the great big book of families, right? Be it in biblical times, maybe here, right? I guess these are all modern times. I don't know what that means down there at the bottom. At any rate, it was just a picture that fit, I guess. Sometimes we can be our own, and sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. Okay, this is good. God chose Abraham, and Abraham chose God. God chose Myra, and Myra chose God. God chose Deb, and God, and
I forget.
I get my tongue all wrapped around my eye tooth and I can't see. Okay, God chose Deb, and Deb chose God. It's a mutual thing going on here. Okay. And Abraham is the father figure of the patriarchs and of the chosen people. You've all heard the term, the Jews are the chosen people. And the Jews are always asking, chosen to do what? Chosen to have everybody, the whole world hate us? Remember Tevye and the Fiddler on the Roof? Why don't you choose somebody else sometime, for a while? They're the chosen people, but chosen to do what? These guys are chosen, and this is so important. The people of Israel, and I want you to know, everybody in this room is one of the people of Israel today. Yes. I don't care if you're natural, if you're adopted into the tree, doesn't matter. You're now a member of the family. And if you're adopted, you're a member of the family. In fact, you have a lot more rights sometimes than the natural born ones. Go to the law books and look it up. They're chosen to do what? They're chosen to tell the whole world. Oh, you got a close-up of this, Joel? I want close-ups of the, okay. They're chosen to tell the whole world about Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. They're chosen to make a big noise about him and to make his name known to the world. That's what we did today in praise and worship. We made a big noise about God. He doesn't mind you being loud. He wants you to be loud. He doesn't want us to be mealy toast. Well, not mealy toast. Mealy mouth, milk toast and mealy mouth. He wants us to be loud and definite about who he is. So who's your daddy? Abraham is not only the father figure of God's chosen nation, but from Abraham also came nations who would become enemies of Israel. Some people find some of their worst enemies are within their own family. Shouldn't be that way, but sometimes that happens. So this is a cool picture, I think, by the time we get done with this. Israel's enemies would like to make her disappear altogether. Is that not true? And most of these enemies of theirs are relatives. They're somehow sure-tell cousins or something, okay? The Chinese are not necessarily the enemies of Israel. See what I mean? Oh, okay. So watch what happens with this map. I think I've got this right. They'd like to make these guys kind of just disappear. Poof, and they would be gone. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. God said, I know this is becoming this is one of the things, this is part of the deaf and dumb spirit that we want to break off of, that we want broken off, that we were talking about earlier today. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain this to where you can understand it. I hope I can. In the covenant, there's lots of warnings that God would destroy his people if they wouldn't obey him, if they wouldn't get it. And he destroyed Jerusalem. Right down, destroyed the temple, right down to the ground. Burned it. 586. I'm going to bring you back. And he did. 70 years later, he brought them back, and they built the thing back up again. Of course, they called it Herod's temple, not God's temple. He says, you guys, I'm going to send the Messiah. He's going to have 70 weeks to get the idea across to you, to present the plan of salvation to you. Are you going to accept it? Are you going to grab a hold of it? Are you going to do it? Are you going to believe him? Some did. Most didn't. Boy, you missed your visitation, you guys. Really? You're going to bring other idols in here and worship them? You're not going to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? You're going to bring other idols in and you're going to give your children over to the fire? Are you kidding me? God's saying to them? Jesus sat on the side of the mountain and wept over Jerusalem. He wept over them. Why did he weep? Because he knew within that generation, 40 years, it was all going to go down again. Herod's temple was going to be, there was going to be no Jew left in the land again. They were either going to die, they were going to be burned, they were going to be sold, they were going to be scattered, but they were going to be there, where he decided to put his name. No. That's one temple down. There's another temple down. And people have been waiting ever since then for another temple to be built. However, that's not what Jesus said. That's not what Yeshua said. He said, Chris, you're the temple. At the end of 70 weeks of his ministry, he sent the Holy Spirit back to live within you. You're the temple. You're the temple. It's not of stone. Things are not written in stone anymore. Things are written on the hearts of flesh. His law is written on the heart of flesh. He expects you to make a big noise about him to the rest of the people. He expects you to be his representative to the rest of the world. Or however your world is. That doesn't mean you have to go to the depths of Africa, but wherever your world is, however large your world is, you're to be a representative of who he is to them. It seems like a simple plan. And we have an entire world, most of them, that would just love to see these people still shoved into the sea and gone. Because they're not at enmity with these people as much as they're at enmity with God, which is exactly what the Bible says man is. That's the condition of man's heart, is that they are at enmity. Am I preaching? I'm sorry. I'm preaching and not teaching, excuse me.
No. Yeah, no.
Okay.
Whatever you're doing is great. It's good.
Okay. I'm sorry. A little preaching doesn't hurt sometimes. At any rate, what were we even talking? We were talking about the enemies of God, I guess, right? Okay. This whole area, I know what I was going to say. This whole area is holy ground. And he said, when he brought his people back, so from, I'll just put them on speakerphone. When he said, when he brought in 70 AD, everything was destroyed. And when he said, when I bring my people back, nothing. You want to hear that? Nothing will ever take them out of the land again. In 1948, he brought them back. Do you think anything is ever going to take those people out of the land again? Then why do we keep thinking that that's going to happen? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
And it's our heritage.
It's ours. It's ours. This is where you belong. I don't care if you go summer there or whatever. You go for a visit, but this is your ground. This is your home. Okay? And you thought you were from Cincinnati. Yes, sir. What?
I'm waiting for the Brian and Manasseh Homestead Act.
Ooh, I like. Yes. Yes. When we were.
Is this for real? It is now.
It is now. He just declared it. It is now. When we were in Israel just 2 weeks ago, right? 2 weeks ago?
Really 2 weeks ago.
Was it a week ago? 2 weeks ago? Anyway, a week and a half ago, we took a map like this. We bought a map, 20 shekels, down in the lobby, and it was a big map, and laid it out. And we had some bread, and we tore the bread in half because this trip was about bread, and we laid it right on what the world calls the West Bank, what you and I call Samaria, Judea and Samaria. And we had just taken a bus ride the day before all the way around the area from Jerusalem up to Tiberias and back down the Jordan River. So we'd gone from here, up here, and down and back. And we prayed for that ground. How did we pray for that ground, Myra?
We claimed it.
You claimed it? Go ahead.
We claimed that Israel would have sovereignty over that, Judea and Samaria. They do anyway, but for them to declare it.
For them to
take control of it.
Yeah. And when we got home, we found out that President Trump that night had declared the Golan Heights were, talk about immediate answer to prayer.
Yes.
Not that we did that, but we had a part of that. We used our little believer's authority to do it, and we didn't even realize what was happening, but it happened. And now, he within that speech, he said, and the West Bank is theirs, right? Didn't he?
He said something like, let's stop calling it the West Bank.
Yes.
Which is exactly what our prayer was about.
And there are no coincidences.
There are no coincidences, no. Okay, so
Show where the Golan is on that.
Golan is this area right over here, right? Yep.
Where did they cross it? Jericho? Golan starts down there, doesn't it?
No, Golan is the high ground up here.
I think that people need to realize why that piece of land is so important. Because before when they didn't have it, it's a high hill area, high elevation, so that rockets or anything that could be brought into Israel was a good strategic point to launch an attack from. And that was one of the reasons they took that high ground to be able to preserve their security for the future. And it's still in their hands naturally, and they would never give that up because of what had happened in the past.
Right.
And that's something I think that people need to realize why it's so important.
It's very important ground. And Syria is just like right there.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, here, it's right here.
And it's closer in to people who would probably want you.
Is this a new map then? That's including the bulge of the Golan Heights there on the upper corner? Or has it been like that?
67 more.
Since they took it back. This is Metula. It's known as the city on the edge. So right over there, you can see Syria right there. I've been there. It's what do they call it? The city at the fence or something, or the city at the something like that.
You can throw a rock in Syria.
Yeah. Here's the concessions for peace that Israel has made. Okay, so this left map over here, got a close up, Joel? Okay. Israel controlled areas in 1967. This is when they took back the Negev. Okay, they took it back. What happened? They gave it back. Okay. And in 2011, see all these, here's the Gaza they gave up, and here's all the Swiss cheese stuff in the West Bank that they gave up, those colored areas. What am I doing?
Yeah.
I know. Look at this. Look at here. Yeah, isn't that amazing? They made Swiss cheese out of it. Yeah. And this is what's become known as the West Bank. Hey, Jane, how you doing? Yay. You got a spot? All right. Here are so we were talking about the decisions that Abraham had made and the nations that came from him. This slide gives you an idea of who came from there. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Something on fire? Okay. All right.
I just wondered if you or Myra could share about the prayer for the water to rise.
Oh, share about the prayer for the water to rise. Okay.
And that was your trip in November.
Yeah. So while Shane's getting settled, and people are taking pictures and putting the piano back together. Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. It's good to see you. It doesn't matter. Myra, Angie wanted to know if you would share with a little bit about how the water in the Galilee,
Well, in November, when we went with FOM to Israel, the Lord told us to lay our hands on the surface of the water in the Sea of Galilee, because the lake was very, very low, dangerously low. It had years of drought. And when we were there a week ago, we went up there for the whole purpose of seeing the lake, because we'd heard that they'd had a lot of rain and the water level had gone up. So that's really why we went up there. And when we saw the the lake,
not a year ago, a week ago.
just a week ago,
Yeah.
a week ago. And when we saw the Sea of Galilee, it is full of water.
Oh, fish and water.
Fish and water, and there's so much of it was dry land that they had put signs up along the beaches, don't go here, don't go there, and now those signs are underwater. It's really cool.
It's like the lake has risen 9 feet, I think, at least. Yeah, it's a miracle. See what happened? See? Yeah. At any rate, it's awesome. So these are some of the nations. Let's just take a look. Ishmael. Abraham's son has Ishmael. These are all the nations that came out of those people. Okay? Abraham had Isaac. And Isaac had Jacob and Esau. And Jacob, these are all, obviously this is Israel that came out of Jacob, right? And here's Abraham is the father of Isaac, and who's the father of Esau. These are all the countries that came out of Esau. The countries over in the Jordan area. And these are Arabian nations that came out of, this is after Sarah dies, he marries again, takes another wife. Her name is Keturah. Some say she's Hagar, some say she's another. That's up for grabs, but these are other nations that came out of him. So he is the father of many nations. He absolutely is. And all based on the decisions that he made. Interesting, huh? With all the turmoil and chaos that's going on in the world today, caused by Abraham's other nations, just kind of, wouldn't you just love to hear about Yah's bringing his wrathful judgment upon Israel's enemies? There's something in us that wants to have that happen. However, but God is a God of mercy and grace. And so let's see what happens in this box down here. And today we read about the tender, loving mercies that Yah extends to the father of the Arab nations. That's what we're going to find out today in today's Torah portion. Okay? So Genesis 21. And it's kind of interesting how this all comes about around the time of Purim. Purim has already passed, a couple weeks ago, but Purim is the time. If we hadn't gone to Israel and we hadn't had a snow day, we would have been here. So it would have been around the time of Purim. So Purim is the time to remember what the enemies of Israel have attempted to do all throughout history. The modus operandi has never changed. They want to wipe Israel off the map, and this is always, always Israel's response. Right here. Here we go. It's a well-known response. They hate us. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. That's always their response. Okay? It won't change. It won't change. It's good. It's a good thing to be part of Israel. And the interaction, I think I put this on your paper because this is important. The interaction between these different people groups, or peoples, just in a few short verses is amazing. So we have Sarah, Abraham, Isaac. We have Sarah, Isaac, Ishmael. Sarah and Abraham. God, Abraham and Sarah. Abraham, Hagar and Ishmael. Hagar, Ishmael, Ishmael by himself, and Abimelech and Abraham. So that's why I say that this is such a densely packed portion. All right, so now, Steve. Ta-da! 1 through 7. Baby Isaac is born, all according to God's plan. Chapter 21 of Genesis.
Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age.
Okay. So, and the Lord, we talked about this a little bit last week, but the Lord visited Sarah. And it's a metaphor for God's intervention into the nature of and human affairs, but particularly nature. You know, she was 90 years old, and she was all dried up. She had no eggs. She was out of eggs. She couldn't borrow any from the neighbor. No. So it was a real creative. It was a real creative miracle. And that word "visit" is pakad. Pakad. Is that right, Myra? Pakad. Yeah, pakad. And Sarah, this impossible miracle woman, is the mother of nations today. Now, when we get into other nations, it's just not the nation of Israel. But I don't care what nation you're from. That's all part of Israel, because that's where the 10 northern tribes scattered to when they left Israel. We'll get into that more later. Not today, but another day. Is there somebody back there that's not supposed to? Is there? Oh, okay. Visited. Pakad also appears. These are the other places that this appears. It doesn't say so in the same English word, visited, but it's the same Hebrew word. So when God intervened to save the Israelites from Egyptian bondage, it was pakad when he intervened. When he ended the famine in the book of Ruth, he intervened. It's the word pakad, he visited. When he ended the famine up in Galilee, right now, with the rainstorm, it was probably, he visited and he pakad. It was a pakad thing. When he made Hannah conceive, 1 Samuel, when she became pregnant with Samuel, he visited her. When he brought the Jewish exiles home from Babylonian captivity in Jeremiah 29:10, it's all the same Hebrew word pakad. He visited. He changed things. God is in control of everything. Don't ever, ever, ever forget that. He's God and we're not. We're the fish in his fishbowl, if you will. Okay, so the birth of Isaac is short and to the point. He read that in 7 verses. That was it, the son of promise, boom. And it happened just as God said. God took note of Sarah. She conceived and bore a son to Abraham. That's what it says. Boom. It's that simple. No marching bands, no special announcements, no breaking bulletins, no writing in the sky. It was just, this is the verse in verse 1. Where's the word pakad? Here it is, right here. Yod He Vav He pakad et Sarai. Et. Aleph Tav. It means this particular Sarah. This particular Sarah, this particular wife of Abraham. Abraham, who was 100 years old, she's 90 years old. Think about it. Think about it. And it made her laugh. It's making Bonnie laugh. Look at that. Just as he said, perfect precision, because that's how God operates. Isaac is born just as Yah said. He's born when Yah said he would be born. He's born just as God had spoken. Abraham circumcised his son just as God commanded, because he believed and obeyed. Can you imagine what this world would be like if for 1 year everybody on this planet did exactly as God asked it? If every baby boy that was born on this planet was circumcised on the 8th day. If every person on this planet kept Shabbat. If every person on this planet kept Passover. If every person on this planet celebrated Sukkot. Just to name a couple. Can you imagine? All of a sudden there would be harmony, and we would not be at enmity with God. If we would just do what he asked us to do. Just like any parent has had a conversation with their child, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 15-year-old, whatever. Can't you just do what I ask you to do one time? We understand that. We can relate to that, right? It's a rhythm. This just serves us as a reminder that life is absolutely, it's a gift. Life, l'chaim, it's a gift from God. It's a gift from God. He's 100, she's 90, and that's a miracle. And it makes you smile. And I was thinking about that, and she's the one who says, wow, I mean, it made her laugh that she was a 90-year-old woman there is nursing a brand new baby boy. It makes her laugh. It makes you laugh. It makes me laugh. Not only did he fix her uterus, he fixed her mammary glands, and for her to be able to give milk to this baby. It's amazing. Perfect precision. That's how he operates. Okay. So at the time of life, springtime, that's what relates to what we're going to talk about this afternoon. It's the time of new life. It's green. When we see things out the window starting to turn green once again, what does everybody go and look for? In there, it was white this morning? Yeah, but in your garden, the crocuses are starting to come up, right? Yeah. They're coming up. They're turning green. And it's beautiful, and it makes everybody kind of do a sigh of relief. Oh, good, winter's almost over. We're looking for clues. We're always looking for clues, and we're always looking for clues. We're always looking for clues that God is still on the throne and he's still in charge. Don't you want to know that? Don't you want to know that somebody's in charge? I'm watching this series on Netflix called Heartland, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend it.
It's so good.
It is so good, and it's all about growing up. It's about growing up, and all these different people are involved in this ranch up in Canada, and it's a family, and they bring in other people. It's about everybody, every single one of these people that's a member of this family or touches this family. They all want to know that they belong. Everybody wants to know that they belong somewhere. That's the cry of everybody's heart. They just want to know that they fit someplace. That somebody will put their arms around them some point in time and just give them a hug and say, I love you. You belong here. You're accepted. There is not one human being on this planet that doesn't want that. Right? That's right. So give somebody a hug today. There's a lot of people that don't get hugs. So gestation takes 40 weeks. And if Isaac was born at the time of Passover, in the spring, or in March, April sometime, then he was conceived at the time of Shavuot. Okay? So when Sodom and Gomorrah, it's probably its time of round then. Sodom and Gomorrah was not a 9th of Ab. No, that was a temple thing, right? We don't know when. Yeah. So this is a. I think I counted 9 months in there. I think I did. I think that's right. Somebody check my math. Isaac's birth, no big fanfare. It was all just as God said. There's, okay, 8 to 14, Stephen, if you would. We got two sides of a coin. How many of you know you have a flip a quarter, heads, and the other side is called tails? There's always two sides to every coin. And Hebrew always has two sides to every word. Interesting. So Isaac, his name means laughter. Here it is in Hebrew, Itzhak. And Itzhak? Itzhak. Oh, this is one of those spitty words. Don't careful. 8 to 14, Steve.
Bel grew and was weaned. And on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, had born to Abraham was mine. Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share the inheritance with my son, Isaac. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God said to him, do not be so distressed about the boy, slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you. Amen. Because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because it is your offspring. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and water and gave them to Hagar, set them on her shoulders, and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba.
Oh boy, in the desert of Beersheba. Remember that word we looked at the well a little bit ago. Okay, so Itzhak, the very word can also have a negative, even immoral connotations to it. Okay? And Ishmael was a bad boy. Okay, so this is the same, let's see, people sat down to play in Exodus, when the golden calf situation, it would be the same root word from Isaac. Genesis, that's Exodus 3:26, Genesis 39:14, making sport is sexual impurity, making fun. Okay, so the difference between laughter and joy and amazement and mocking, there's big difference. Isaac receives his name from the spontaneous laughter which erupted when God promised a baby to the elderly Sarah. That's where the name came from. She said, you'll call him Isaac, you'll call him laughter. And Ishmael is sent away because he laughs at the one who caused laughter. Meaning God. Ishmael was essentially mocking God. The enemies of Israel are the people who mock God. I don't care if you're an American or you're a British citizen, you're a Frenchman, you're a Dutchman, you're from Mexico. If you're mocking God, you're his enemy. So the great example of how God looks at the heart. This is a great example. Motive does make a big difference. Laughter of joy is one thing. Mocking the very son whom God ordained to carry the covenant into the next generation mocks God himself. Does that make sense? No. Make no mistake, God will not be mocked. So Sarah says, cast out the bondwoman. And yet Yah sustains them, he reveals himself to them, he gives them water, he opens their eyes to see what they could not see, and yet Hagar and Ishmael do not figure into Yah's eternal plan. He's gracious to them, and yet he intends to complete and bring to completion his eternal plan. See, it doesn't matter if you're outside of Israel. God there's a door open. There's an opportunity for anybody outside of Israel to come on in. Come on in. But you can't, but it's not an automatic thing. It's not an automatic thing for Israel, for someone born inside of Israel to be part of the plan. You have to choose to be the plan, right? You choose him, he chooses you. Let's see what this says. Oh, yet. He's making provision for these people, but the Redeemer of mankind, the Redeemer, the seed, the Redeemer of mankind is going to come through the seed of Isaac, whether we like it or not. It's not going to come through Ishmael, which is why Islam is a big joke. Islam is a big lie. It's not coming through Islam. Allah and Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh are not the same thing. Not at all. This is the picture. When you look for pictures of Ishmael and Hagar being thrown out into the desert, woo-hoo-hoo. Big crocodile, does it make you cry? Oh, that was really mean of Sarah. Sarah wasn't being mean, she was being right. Just maybe. That's a false picture of Ishmael. At the time that Isaac was weaned, he would be, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. This kid is 13 years older. This guy's a young man. He's 17 to 20 years old. Okay? Don't feel sorry for him. Don't feel sorry for him. He's a big boy. He's past the age of knowing to choose right or wrong. Ishmael's not a little boy. He's at least 17 years old after Isaac is weaned. He looks more like this guy. Like the bad kids that show up on Heartland. Yeah. And you can tell right by looking at them. You guys got some issues. You can work through some things, right? All right, there he is. Justice and mercy. Today we have a difficult time seeing how these two things can be administered at the same time. We want it. To us, justice should be just wipe them out. Round them up, take them off to jail, and throw away the key. At least that's how I look at it sometimes. I get so frustrated. Here we have Hagar. She's a powerless female, and Ishmael is the result of Abraham trying to bring about covenant results in his own strength. That'll happen every time. We get out ahead of God. We're trying to do things in our own da-da-da-da-da. We don't wait for him to lead the way and open the doors. It results in Ishmael resulted in the son of Abraham's flesh. And this Hagar episode is totally contrary to the covenant of promise. Okay? And Hagar and Ishmael become the elephant in the room, if you will. This is a laugh. You could insert laughter here. Don't be too over exuberant about it, but okay. Hagar and Ishmael will never figure into the covenant. Why? Because God did not ordain that they should be, or rather, because it's in Isaac that your seed shall be called. So just because they're there in the room does not change God's plan to bring about the promised Messiah through the Son of Promise. So Abraham and Ishmael must part ways. There are consequences to the decisions that we make. Okay? So out they go. And yet Yah hears their cry. Remember, this kid he's not 10. He's 17 or 20, somewhere. And Sarah wasn't being mean. She was being right. There is no mixing allowed. we can't mix pagan stuff and godly stuff. He doesn't allow it. Don't do it. Abraham's flesh and God's promise would never bring about the result of God's plan to redeem mankind. I'm going to say that again. Abraham's flesh and his own desire, and let me figure this out, God, I'll just go take this woman from Egypt and have a kid with her. That'll do it, right, God? This is your promise, right? No? Well, now you got to deal with it. Am I getting the point across? Are you understanding what I'm saying? Okay. Abraham's flesh and God's promise would never bring about the result of God's plan to redeem mankind. He had one plan. He's got one idea. It's his plan. It's going to be implemented, right? Okay. Once the mistake is made, it's made, and often there are consequences, and the consequences often multiply, and they do. This is my favorite. I hope this comes through. Crying won't fix it. Remember this scene from my favorite movies? I can't even remember the name of the... This guy, he's a professional baseball player that got hurt, and he gets, during the war, and this is a true story, I think, he gets hurt, and so he doesn't play baseball anymore, but he gets hired to run a women's baseball team during World War II while the guys are off shooting Hitler, winning the war. He's got to put up with all the women's estrogen. He just drives him crazy. He's yelling at her because she made a bad play, and she doesn't get it, and he's yelling at her, and then he winds up saying, "There's no crying in baseball. You can't." Imagine a coach yelling at a baseball player and him breaking down crying. Well, at any rate, this thing, crying, will not fix this situation. And so let's find out what happens. 15 to 21, Steve.
When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. And she went off and sat down about a boat shot away. She thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And as she sat there, she began to sob. God heard the boy crying. And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What's the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying. Lie there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. While he was living in the desert of Haran, his mother got a wife for him.
Okay. This is fairly simple.
That doesn't sound like a 17-year-old.
It sounds like a little boy.
Why? Why does it sound like a little boy? Interesting.
His mother did everything for him.
Oh.
Someone once said that he may have had problems like maybe a Down person.
No. No.
Or Eve was a spoiled
No, he was a spoiled brat. Yeah, and yeah, it's somebody else. Somebody else? You took him over there, and then she goes away, far away, so she won't hear him crying?
God said, lift the boy up and take him by the hand.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, okay, and do what with him? What does it say after that?
Smack his butt.
So we could,
Let's talk about it.
For I will make him into a great nation.
Says, tell him to be a man, go find,
Yeah, man up.
go find water for
Go find water.
Get up here. Yeah. She's the one who didn't want to. To me, it seemed like she was. Why would she just walk away from him?
Because he was a spoiled brat. So she was the most responsible of the two.
What?
She was the most responsible of the two, and he wasn't doing nothing, and she couldn't find water for him.
She's frustrated. She couldn't do anything. And God says, pick him up. Okay, now, yes.
This version says that when the water was gone, she left him under a bush. She went and sat down looking the other way about a bow shot distance from him because she said, I can't bear to watch my child die. So she sat there looking the other way, crying out and weeping. So she was crying out and weeping. But then it says, God heard the boy's voice. And the angel of God called Hagar from heaven and said,
Okay.
"Sir, what's wrong with you?"
Couple things, okay, that's very good, thank you very much. Couple things, how far is a bow shot? 300 feet?
Football field.
Not that far.
Not that far, 100 feet?
It's usually 150, considered a good,
All right,
they're saying, I mean, if you want to kill what you're shooting, 50 yards is considered far.
okay, let's just pretend it's 150 feet. Okay, let's just pretend. And so she separates herself, and she's crying. Vicky says Steve read, Vicky said she's the one who's weeping and crying, not the boy. He's 17, he's not crying, he's going, oh geez. He's not crying. And he calls out to God, and God hears his voice. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's exactly what Ishmael means. Man who's heard by God. So there was a prophetic sentence even in his name. God heard his voice. Ishmael. God heard God heard the voice of this. What God heard? Ma is almost in there. The word what, isn't it? Ma. Ishmael. Shema is in there. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So afterwards, why don't we look up the Hebrew and we'll find out how old he was.
What,
By the Hebrew word for boy.
for boy, yeah, it will be Na'al. It will be young man, right? Yeah, not a little.
Whatever.
Yeah. It'll either be if somebody wants to do that, it'll either be Yalad, which is boy, or Na'al, which is young man. Well, I know it's going to be Na'al because he was 13 years old when he was born, and this is after Isaac was weaned, so he's probably around 13. He's 17 to 20. He's got to be. Yes.
I looked it up. The Y one, Y-A, whatever, A-L. Yaled. Yeah, Yaled.
I want to see that myself.
It explained that it could be they find it many times when it's translated in different places with blood.
I want to look that up. I want to see that myself. So you show it to me. You can look it up and show it to me. That would be good. Okay. We can tell. Okay. So as the water is spent from the bottle, she cast the child under the shrubs. Poor little guy, God opened her eyes, and she saw the well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the boy a drink. There she is. She didn't say, hey, Ishmael, there's a well over here. Let's get some water, and you drink. She went and got it and took it to him. Evidently. He's 3. I don't know. Maybe. Ishmael becomes an archer. He takes himself, verse 21. So he dwelt in the wilderness. He's going to get toughened up in the wilderness now. He's got a well. And he knows how to shoot, so he can fix himself some stuff. And his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So they went back to Egypt, and he gets married, and he's going to live in Paran, in the village of Paran. And this looks like today it looks like the moon. I don't know what it looked like back then, but well, it's after Sodom and Gomorrah, so it looked like that back then, I guess, right? So, there you go. Where have we heard this before? Paran. Numbers 10, and the children of Israel took their journeys out of the wilderness of Sinai, and the cloud rested in the wilderness of Paran. Okay, so that's where God took them, up here. So what it looks like, here's Sinai, here's the Red Sea, this is Egypt is over here. They crossed the Sinai. Here's Mount Sinai. This is where they were for a couple years. The wilderness of Sinai, the wilderness of Paran, right here. Northeastern Israel, and this is what it looks like. Okay, 22 to 24. Abimelech. Here comes Abimelech. This is the Philistines. Now we're going to get involved with the Philistines. Let's see what happens.
At that time, God is with you in everything you do. Now, swear to me here before God that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants. Show to me in the country where you now reside as a foreigner the same kindness I have shown to you. Abraham said, I swear.
Oh, those are very famous words. You might want to underline that in your Bible if you're prone to, he said, I swear it. Okay, here's a map of Israel. Here's Judah. This is the Dead Sea. Here's the area of Judah. Jerusalem would be right in here. Here's the Philistine territory. Today we call it Gaza. Here's the Galilee up here. And this becomes Judea and Samaria. Okay. So this is where Abimelech is from. He's going to come out here and visit at Beersheba. Abimelech says, now therefore swear to me that you will not deal falsely with me. Remember last week? He made a deal with him, right? I mean, he had taken Sarah, and Sarah, he was given back, and he gave Abraham all kinds of things, all kinds of wealth. He really increased Abraham's wealth last week with livestock and all manner of things. Yep. Of Gerar. Yep. He's and it's the Philistine area. He's the king of the Philistines, if you will. And now he's saying, I want to make sure that, because I gave you all that stuff last week, and I gave you back your wife, and I didn't touch her because God said I was a dead man if I did. I gave her back to you, and now here it is a couple, 6 years later. And he said, I want to make sure that you're not going to deal falsely with me and with my offspring or with my posterity, because remember, he kind of got stopped from having any posterity for a couple of years last week. You remember that? But that according to the kindness that I have done to you, meaning I made you wealthy, or added to your wealth, that you will do to me and to you will do to me, and I can't read that. And to the land in which you have dwelt. And Abraham said 3 little words. Not I love you, but he might as well have said that. He said, I will swear.
I will.
I will swear I won't do you any harm. And to this day, there's the Gaza Strip. And Myra always has a solution for the Israelis and the Gaza Strip. And and I love to hear it every time because it just makes me giggle. It just makes me smile. What is your solution to the Gaza Strip?
Turn off their electricity. Then their computers will die, their phones will die, they can't shoot rockets, they can't go to the movies, they can't swim in their swimming pools, and their air conditioning won't work. They won't be able to cook any food that they're bringing in from Israel.
Or water, yeah.
Water.
That they're bringing, yeah.
They won't freeze to death because
it's in the
degrees,
right.
So they won't freeze to death.
It makes so much sense that it's so practical that when she tells that to her Jewish friends, who she has Jewish friends over there in high places, they go, oh, that will work. We can't do that, right?
Yeah.
They don't have the heart.
Do that? Well,
They will never do that.
they haven't paid their electric bill in 9 years.
They haven't paid their electric bill in many, many years, and Israel just keeps putting up with it. It's amazing. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they're afraid of world condemnation.
But now, can you see where the strings are in history? History always has strings attached to it, and this is where it comes from, right here on the pages of the Bible. King Abimelech. And God told them earlier, you will always, as long as there's history, you're going to have problems with Abimelech, which is a title, not necessarily an individual's name, but it's the king of the Philistines. Okay. 25 to 34. We'll finish this up, Steve. This is where the magic comes in, right here, these verses.
Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. But Abimelech said, I don't know who has done this. You did not tell me, and I heard about it only today. So Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a treaty. Abraham set apart 7 ewe lambs from the flock, and Abimelech asked Abraham, What's the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs you have set apart by themselves? He replied, Accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug this well. So that place was called Beersheba, because the 2 men swore an oath there. After the treaty had been made at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time.
Okay. Pretty smart. We're going to see this Abraham. So Abraham rebuked Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had seized. So here comes Abimelech's people, his servants, the Philistines, and they seized this well. I thought it was pretty. I just finally noticed as Steve is reading through that, those were the terms of the covenant that he read there. So here comes Abimelech, and here comes Abraham. He says, okay, I'm going to go get 7 lambs, 7 ewes, and I'm going to give these to him. And he responds, Abimelech responds, what is the meaning of these? And Abraham says, I'm giving these ewes to you so that there will be a witness between you and me that this well is my well. And he goes, because your guys tried to take it. I think he said that right before. And Abimelech says, I didn't know anything about that. Okay, so here's 7 lambs. I'm going to give these to you. And right now, you and me are going to make an agreement that this well right here is my well. And Abimelech says, what? Okay. He says, okay. That makes sense. Fair enough. That makes sense? I know this sounds like old history and doesn't matter. Nothing matters. It doesn't matter. Why do I need to know about an old well that was dug 3,500 years ago? History, that's one of our big problems today, like we were praying about earlier. We have forgotten our history, not only in our land, but the Bible history. This is totally important. I'll show you, huh? Yes. Probably they're as important as, and that's what he was just doing. Yeah, that's just what he was doing. So now to settle the situation that Abimelech doesn't even know about. Yeah, right? Some of you guys expressed a little doubt that Abimelech didn't know anything about it. But let's just pretend that he didn't. Now he knows. And now he's making an agreement with Abraham. These are 2 powerful guys down there in the area. So is this negotiation like after the fact? It almost seems like it, doesn't it? But he's going to make it very official now with the act that he just went through with the 7 ewes and I'll give you back 7 sheep that you gave me 6 years ago. Right? And now you're going to make sure that this water is going to be okay. Here we go.
I think that was the first time in history that there was a U-turn.
And now we know where the U-turn comes from. Steve, I think we're just going to have to put you on the payroll or something because that's very good. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what Beersheba means?
It means well of the oath.
Well, hello.
Right? Well of the oath. Well of the 7 oath. Well of the oath. Pardon? Yeah, oh, yeah, that's what we just saw. Did you see the clip at the beginning? Beersheba. I'll show it again. We'll take a look. Okay, hang on. There you go. So then Abimelech asked Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 ewes? Pretty smart, this Abraham. He's a pretty smart guy. He's a smart guy. He got the peace treaty from the king of Gerar, the Philistines, and then he procures the water in the land. Okay, in 29. Now, what happens is, pretty smart, By granting Abraham rights to a well, Abimelech has made it possible for Abraham to live there permanently. Can you all say permanently? Permanently. And had acknowledged his legal right to at least water. Okay? That's going to become very important in the next, as we watch the life of Isaac. And exactly what the Philistines did to these rights. So Abraham plants a tamarisk tree so that the whole world would remember.
What is that? What that tree symbolizes?
You see tamarisk trees. You see them all over Israel today. There's either, is that the oak tree? It's a tamarisk tree, tamarisk and a terebinth. It's a big shade tree that probably keeps people cool. I don't know. It's an important tree in the Bible lands, and it's a memorial. Huh? No, I don't think it's a fruit. Is it? Is it? Is it something to do with the pistachio? Is this the pistachio nut tree? I don't know. We'll look it up. Beersheba was certainly a place of worship and the administrative center all during Samuel's time. So he procured the right for his people to be there. Remember, he bought... We haven't watched him buy Hebron yet, have we? No, that's a couple weeks from now. No, but this becomes a very important part of Israel's history because Abraham secured the land and secured the water rights. So here around 2100 BC, in this sparsely inhabited and unclaimed area, we have the establishment of the city of Beersheba, the city of the oath, oath of seven, meaning 7 U-turns. That was a home to Abraham and his family. He lived here. Abraham lived here after that. And this is the area that it's in, right here. Hebron, this is the area where Abraham is buried, and he'll secure land up there. But this is where he secured land right here. Here's Gaza. That makes sense? Okay. Now, here's the punchline of the whole lesson, I think. Abraham was thinking, just as he secured the well that his son Ishmael drank from, I want you to realize this. This is the Beersheba, that well that he was down there, was the very well that the angel of the Lord pointed out to Hagar to give his son Ishmael a drink from. Okay? It's the very same well. He didn't dig this one, it was there. God dug it, or found it, or provided it, or whatever. Perhaps this is a hint for us in Scripture that the water that preserved the life of Abraham's first son, Ishmael, is still available to the offspring of Ishmael via the living water that Yeshua offers now. Huh. God always leaves a doorway for people to come in and join his family. It's always there. We have to, if we're not smart enough to look for them and identify them and see them and search them out, because we ask God, what does all this mean? And know our history, know our biblical history, there's a way for Ishmael, the Arab people, to come back into God's house. But it's not going to be through Allah. It's going to be through Jesus only. And I think, so as we close, we can be assured that the covenant promises to Abraham did not exempt him from the struggles of life, nor does it you. Just because you're one of God's kids doesn't mean you're not going to have trouble. Sorry to tell you that. If nobody hasn't told you that, I'm breaking it to you right now. I'm just being flat out there, okay? Stuff happens. Noah's rose, he never promised you a rose garden. But he promised you to be there to help you through the struggles, right? Abraham is no longer, this is important, Abraham is no longer a mere sojourner in the eyes of those living in the area. He's now a player. And he's a guy to be reckoned with. And this is how he did it. With the well of water. With the well of water that gave life to his firstborn son, and with the well of water that's going to represent the living water of Yeshua in the days to come. Okay? I think Yep, there he is. So as we close, we can be assured that Abraham will be the father of all who believe in God's plan. And I think we'll leave it at that.
So that word treaty that he made with
Yes.
Abimelech,
Yes.
I think that is the word brit, which is a covenant.
Yeah.
It's much stronger than a treaty.
Yep.
A covenant.
I don't know why they didn't use, later, in a couple verses later, he uses the word covenant, but in that particular place he uses treaty, so it would,
Different translations uses treaty.
yeah,
Treaties can be broken, but covenants cannot.
no.
This, in the verse 27 here, it says, and both of them cut a covenant.
Both of them they cut a covenant? Okay.
Yeah, see,
Well.
it's very, very strong. That's
And
why-
maybe what those 7 U-turns were there for was to cut the covenant. It could very well be, come to think of it then.
That's why it's still in force today.
That's why the,
Even though we may
they're there in Gaza.
or agree with it, it's still.
Or want to turn their electricity off.
It's okay to turn their electricity on. Breaking the covenant.
That's not breaking the covenant,
No.
okay.
They didn't have electricity.
They didn't- That's true.
So